I think most of the 20th century saw a huge wave of this homogenization. But I think it's also important to remember that this wave of homogenization was never complete. And this proved to be really difficult for companies as they sought to globalize the industry, to give some examples. So as companies pushed out their brands and entered different markets, they discovered, often to their surprise, that different cultures, different societies continued to have some very distinct preferences, which were very hard to shift. So the United States was a huge consumer of makeup. Europeans and East Asians spent much greater on skincare. East Asians hardly spent on perfume, and whatever companies did, they so far failed to raise that. The French had disproportionate spending on perfumes. So for all the homogenization going on in how we meant to be beautiful, persistent national differences were still noticeable. And my argument is that globalization in the last 20 years has started to work in the opposite direction from how it worked previously. I think globalization is spreading diversity now rather than constricting it. And there's a number of reasons why this is happening. One is that, you know, in the major Western nations, the United States or France, populations are ethnically very diverse now. So there are simply a lot of different marketing opportunities that companies wish to take advantage of. But also the rise of power and wealth of countries like China, India, and Russia is suddenly making their beauty ideals aspirational, perhaps, certainly impossible to ignore. So the major players in the industry now are very interested in supplying those markets, for sure, but also experimenting with taking their beauty ideals and brands derived from those ideals back to Western countries as consumers now increasingly seek greater diversity in what it means to be beautiful. I've argued that we've seen a greater diversity in beauty ideals in recent decade or so. You could say that it's an orchestrated diversity. And the great example of that, I think, is L'Oréal. L'Oréal is a French company, of course, from the early 20th century. Through to the 1980s, it was overwhelmingly French company with a very nice portfolio of French brands, and it's primarily a hair care company even then. What happened then? Under the leadership of Lindsay Owen Jones, their chief executive, during the 1990s, they brought a whole portfolio of American brands, including the iconic Maybelline, Redken, Matrix, Kiehl's, the sort of niche brand in New York. And what they then did was globalize these brands and took them around the world. So by the early 21st century, L'Oréal was offering consumers worldwide a choice: French beauty or American beauty. It's the same company, but they're offering them this portfolio of brands in intriguing ways. Then in the last 10 years, they've been buying brands from other countries and starting to experiment in the same direction. So their biggest purchase was The Body Shop, which is kind of a British green brand. So now they can offer consumers British style greenness. They've also brought probably the only luxury Chinese beauty brand, Yusai. They've also brought an iconic makeup artist, Japanese brand, Xiaomu. And they're taking those around the world too. So L'Oreal is an excellent example, but I think most of the other big companies now have a portfolio of brands based in different beauty ideals, which they offer to consumers.